every rock hugger at the crag and gym rat down the wall thinks they're an expert when it comes to climbing shoes. But 90% of the time, they're just regurgitating what they heard from the last dude they spoke to. And it's amazing how quickly misinformation can spread, and even what was once good information can mutate into something else, like a climbing community-wide game of Chinese whispers. So in this week's video, I want to debunk some long-held climbing shoe myths created by climbers from over the years. Now, if there's one bit of gear I love more than any other, it's climbing shoes. Anyone who follows me on Instagram knows I have a shoe fetish. And for the simple reason that unlike every other piece of kit out there, none affect your performance anywhere near as much as those rubberized slippers you stick on your feet. And nobody ever forgets their first pair of climbing shoes. I can still remember mine, my old pair of green red chilies. They were just a cheap pair of beginner shoes, but they got me through the first year of my climbing before I upgraded to some 510 Anasazi Velcros, and then eventually my first pair of Scarpas, the legendary Boosters. Now this is the first video of a 3-part series that has been kindly supported by my climbing shoe sponsor, Scarpa. The aim of which is to give you the knowledge to help choose the right climbing shoes for you. Saying that, this isn't about one brand. It's about climbing shoes as a whole, regardless of your brand loyalties. So without further ado, let's get started on busting some climbing shoe myths. One of the first things any climber hears when they first start is that their climbing shoes have to be super tight if they want to do the job well. And often, this feels a bit like the old saying, no pain, no gain. But I'm here to say that that just isn't true. Of course you need a shoe that is snug fit, but it should never be painful. It's actually more important that the shoe is comfortable, because if you're in pain, you can't stand on anything. And without a doubt, the most common problem I hear from climbers is their shoes being painful. If you're in pain, then it could be that the shoe is either too tight or that the shoe is a bad fit. If the shoe doesn't fit, it'll feel tight and or baggy in all the wrong places, potentially causing discomfort and pain. Now it's vitally important to find a shoe that fits your feet, but fit means one of two things: the size or the shape. Now I commonly hear new climbers saying that they were encouraged to go X number of size down from their street shoe size. But this is a surefire way to get the wrong fit. And experienced climbers often get carried away trying to cram their feet into smaller and smaller shoes for a better performance. It's true that a tighter fit may give better performance. You will get more support from the shoe as well as closer foot to rock contact for improved sensitivity. But eventually it starts having diminishing returns. It will of course cause pain, but it'll also change the way the shoe responds to your foot, removing the performance benefits the shoe was built to provide. Secondly, the shape of the shoe is just as important to consider, and nearly every climbing shoe is built to a different shape. The shape of the shoe is called the last. Now the last is a plastic mold that the shoe is built around that gives it its shape. But did you know that some climbing shoe brands label the last on the inside of the shoe? For example, all Scarpa shoes have this labeled here on the inside tag. You can read FZ there, which is the name of the last. And what that means is if there's another shoe that has the same FZ last, then you know for sure that you will fit that shoe in the same size. Some lasts won't fit you perfectly, so if a shoe is painful or baggy, try experimenting with different lasts until you find the one that fits perfectly. Now the question is, does the shoe need to be painfully tight? Well, in reality, no it doesn't. Ideally, your toes should be touching the end of the shoe and there should be no baggy space or air pockets inside. So, when you're looking for new climbing shoes, try and avoid sizing them too small. It's really important to try on different sizes and lasts. And if you are struggling to find a shoe that fits, remember that some brands actually have lots of shapes or lasts. I know for a fact that Scarpa has over 20 different lasts and 40 different models covering narrow to wide feet and variances in heel depth and arch height. So there will be a perfect fit for you out there. Remember to keep trying different sizes and shapes until you get a snug and well-fitting shoe. Walking into a climbing store, one of the first things you notice is the big wall splattered in an array of brightly coloured and oddly shaped climbing shoes. Of course, the most attractive shoes are the sleek looking and mostly brightly coloured of the bunch. The ones that arch up on their toe and heel like some sort of venomous creature about to pounce. Those are the downturned shoes and what are commonly referred to as the technical shoes. The myth goes that the more downturned the shoe, the harder you can climb. But that's just not true. And the term technical is being used incorrectly here. It implies that those shoes which aren't downturned aren't technical. Now, a technical shoe refers to a shoe built for a specific purpose. You know, like a Ferrari is built to go fast or a tractor is built to plow fields. Each shoe is built to perform in its own specialized area. You know, downturned shoes are designed to perform better on overhangs, just as some shoes are designed to stand more securely on smaller footholds. So, to bust the myth, down shoes aren't more technical than other shoes. They are just specialized for climbing on more overhanging terrain. Just as you wouldn't use a Ferrari to plow the field, the best thing you can do in your purchasing of climbing shoes is to understand what type of technical shoe you need for your climbing and choose accordingly. Now, there's a common myth that even I believed for many years, that soft rubber is less durable than stiff rubber. It makes sense. Soft means weak. Stiff means strong. Simples.
Simples.
But this is in fact not entirely true. In fact, on paper, they are much the same in terms of durability. The main differences between stiff and soft rubber is when climbing with them and seeing how they perform on different types of foothold. Soft rubber molds to larger surfaces, making it way better for smearing, whereas stiff rubber is stronger and more supportive for your toes, making it far better for standing on small edges. The issue comes when we force soft rubber to stand on small edges. Over time, this causes the rubber to flex more, which might then give the impression of it being less durable. You might be able to argue the same of stiff rubber being forced to smear more. As it's less grippy, it could slip easier and then cause more wear on the edge of your boot. But in the climbing scenarios they are suited to, they both stand up to the same repetitive wear and tear. What no climber ever wants to hear is that it's their fault their climbing shoes wore out. But unfortunately, that's most often the case. I know for a fact that when I climb a lot on rough granite, my shoe rubber wears down faster, whereas when I climb on polished limestone, my shoes last a lot longer. And when I say wear down, what I mean is that the rubber sole stuck to the bottom of the shoe becomes thinner in places, eventually to the point that you're no longer edging on the sole of the shoe, but the rubbery layer below it called the rand. And eventually, if you keep climbing, the actual material structure of the shoe. If you're perceptive, you'll be able to tell quite a lot about the way you climb from the way your shoes wear down. If you find the upper part of the shoe wears away, perhaps it's because you're dragging your toe up the wall as you step up from a foothold. Or if the front part of your toe wears away, it might be that you pivot hard on footholds. Now, often holes in climbing shoes have been regarded as a sign of bad technique, but I would honestly say that that's probably the contrary. They probably show that you use your feet exceedingly well. But finally, to bust the myth, is soft rubber less durable than stiff? On the whole, no. So long as you identify that soft and stiff rubber both perform best in their own areas, you shouldn't wear out one much faster than the other. Soft rubber is great for smearing on larger surfaces, such that you'd get on indoors and in sandstone, whereas stiff rubber is better for edging, such that you'd find on granite. So don't be put off buying soft shoes thinking you won't get your money's worth. We all know that feeling of seeing the early signs of wear on the edge of your shoe. Then the lingering question begins, is it time for a new pair of shoes? Or should I consider a resole? But resoles, you've heard the rumors, they can decrease the performance of your shoe. Is it worth it to save some money and do your little bit for the planet? About 10 years ago, I was on a climbing trip and was on the verge of wearing a big fat hole in the end of my climbing shoes. I desperately needed a new pair quickly, but didn't have the money or the means to get one right there and then. So I opted for a local resoler to take my much loved pair of climbing shoes and give them a second lease on life. Long story short, my shoes were ruined by the resoler. The rubber sole felt clunky, the shoe shape had changed, and I spent the remainder of the trip not trusting my feet. This experience totally put me off resoling my shoes for a long time. That was until a few years ago when I thought I'd finally give it another go, having heard that resoles had improved a lot since then. I was ecstatic to find that not only were they renewed, but they were better than new. The resoler had brought back to life my old pair of climbing shoes, and I didn't even have to break them in anymore as they were molded to my feet from having used them so much before. So where does this rumor come from? Well, honestly, resoling is not an easy thing to do. It's done by hand, and it's an incredibly skillful thing to do, let alone do well. 10 years ago, there was little standards set for climbing shoe resoles, so you really didn't know what you were going to get. But these days, there are brand certified resolers. It's like when you get your car fixed. You don't want to go to the dodgy mechanic who'll just fix your car with some duct tape. You want it to be fixed properly so you don't crash. All my shoes have been resoled either by Scarpa directly or with a Scarpa certified resoler. All good resolers will make sure to be certified with the brands themselves, so for quality assurance, always go with them. Some of my pairs are on their 4th generation of resole and still going strong. Softer shoes, such as the Drago, do have a shorter resole lifespan due to the softness of the midsole, but the stiffer shoes, such as the Instincts, can be continually resoled again and again and again. So to answer the question, does resoling decrease the performance of your climbing shoe? Well, I think you already know the answer. Absolutely not. Just remember, it's not the process, it's the practitioner. Resoling is not only going to improve your shoe, but it's better for the environment and easier on your wallet. Everybody should be resoling their shoes before they get even close to wearing through the material of the shoe. For more information on Scarpa resoles, I've got a link below in the description where you can find details on their direct resole service and links to Scarpa certified resolers. At a climbing wall or crag, it's only too common to hear a climber complaining that they're falling or climbing badly because of their shoes. Is this true, or is it just sour grapes because they keep falling off? As much as our shoes are exceptionally designed, they are not infallible. We touched on a very key point already in this video about choosing the right shoe for the right scenario. And this is really important to understand, irrespective of whether you're looking for your first pair of climbing shoes or a new pair of technical performance shoes. So can climbers blame their shoes for falling off? Of course you can! You can blame them for your foot popping, for your calves getting pumped. You can even blame them for your shoddy technique. But in the end, it's up to you to make sure you make the right decision when it comes to the climbing shoes you wear. Looking at beginner climbers, it's easy to be enticed by more experienced friends to go for the more downturned shoes because in their words, they are more technical. But as I said earlier, shoes are designed fit for purpose, and beginner climbing shoes are also technical in their own way. If you're a beginner climber starting out on an indoor climbing wall, then choosing a shoe that is comfortable as well as soft is super important. Something like a Veloce would be perfect as it has a less asymmetric design, has a wider forefoot, but also super soft and grippy for large indoor climbing footholds. For climbers out there who are moving on to their first pair of performance shoes, they might not want to go too heavily on the downturned shoes either, but instead look at shoes like this Vapor Velcro, which are brilliant all-rounders for all angles, indoors and out. And for climbers who are wanting a more specialized shoe for steep sport climbing, they may want to look at something on the more downturned spectrum. You know, something like a Mago here or a Booster, for example, both with a highly precise tool for extra power on steep climbs, and it makes one hell of a difference when climbing on terrain like that. And that concludes today's video on climbing shoes. But before we finish, if you want to know more about climbing shoes, I've got way more videos on the way. But not only that, head over to scarpa.co.uk blog, as I've got several in-depth articles that delve deeply into the nitty-gritty technical details of choosing climbing shoes. And I've got links to those in the description below. And on that note, it's time to say goodbye. Thanks guys for watching, hope you enjoyed this, and be sure to like, subscribe, and ding that wee bell for notifications on when my next video is out.